All right, welcome everybody. I hope you're enjoying this early autumn day at your side of the world, wherever that might be. I'm in Portugal at the moment. My name is Michiel van Nieuwenhoven, and I'm here today to give you some of the insights that I have learned throughout working on urban farming, urban agriculture, urban permaculture, however you want to name it, in refugee camps, more specifically in refugee camps in the Middle East, in Jordan, camps and disadvantaged communities, basically. I'd like to thank first and all the World Food Forum and those for organizing it and facilitating this event. Thank you for that. I share my gratitude. And then also thanks to all the people who have been ever involved in the organization greening the camps. What I'm going to try to do today is explaining our story, explaining the path that we have taken. And it might be a little bit unconventional, but I'm going to try to show you some of the technical details, let's say, of how we do it. Call it a design methodology to also kind of empower you to do it yourself. And I'm going to do this by using images and illustrations that we have made of projects that we have done. And in the meantime, while I explain the different steps in setting up an urban farm, I will tell some anecdotes about the different projects that I'm showcasing. I hope that works for everyone. So, all right. This session, basically, I'm going to start with an introduction in which I will share a couple of anecdotes from my own life, not because I necessarily enjoy speaking about myself, but more because usually when I attend a lecture, I am quite equally interested in knowing the backgrounds of the person behind the project, as much as the project itself. So I'll start with this a little bit, so you see where I come from, how I ended up doing this for a few years, for 4 years in my life. Then we'll have a look at what urban farming is shortly, and then we'll go through developing an urban farm. Maybe one side note, as we have always taken a lot of joy and pleasure, but also pride in the work we have doing, there is a little bit of a focus on the aesthetics as well. You will see that in the pictures. This also comes from a sense of respect for the people that we have worked with and for the clients and the beneficiaries, in the sense that they have always allowed us to enter their private spaces. So I think it's nice from us as well to show this in a good light. So we don't really participate in showing horrific images of difficult living circumstances and everything, since we also try to radiate an image of hope and then working on the solution rather than keep on broadcasting the problem, and also out of respect for the privacy of the people we've worked with, since they also take pride in their own living environment. So that's that. We have even more people joining. Wonderful. And okay, here we go. Next slide, if I may. Introduction. Cool. All right, I'm showing here some pictures of more or less where I grew up. So as I said, my name is Michiel. I'm 29 years old, and I grew up in a rural environment, a village about 10 kilometers east of Leuven, which is a historical provincial small town about 30 kilometers east of Brussels, the capital of Belgium. It's quite a gorgeous, quite a historically rich agricultural area because of its widespread presence of loamy clay, loamy sand soil. So throughout the area, you could find quite some of these medieval fortified farms bearing witness to the history of the landscape. So there's a lot of agricultural fields, a lot of forest, a lot of meadows, a lot of marshlands in the deeper valleys. More and more people joining. Cool, this is getting busy. Welcome to all the newcomers as well. We just started. So I grew up in this environment, a little bit in an old school maybe. No Game Boy, no PlayStation, no TV before 8 p.m. So a lot of time outdoors in the fields, in the forests, playing at my friends' farms. The background where I come from, my father's a carpenter, my mom's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, my brother is used to be a gardener and is now a stonemason. and my small brother is a industrial engineer. So the environment where we grew up in, there was always space for learning. There was always a space for teaching. So education had quite a central role. And besides that, there was a lot of space for building. So there was this part: design, build, learn, teach, and in the meantime, play outdoors. So this observation with nature. I can't remember the exact amount of years, but I must have spent about 15 years or more in Scouts. So I was quite deeply ingrained in this. Now, when I had to make my choice to go decide what to do with the rest of my life, as it goes, as in choosing an option in university, I chose for engineer architects with a master specialization in urban design, because for me, this was a good combination between designing, building, the interest in technical aspects in construction, but also the interest in improving people's living circumstances and in trying to have a positive impact on the living environment through private and public spaces, and if possible, also through green spaces. Next slide. All right. Well, when we do our masters, we got an interesting opportunity to go abroad to South America, to Africa, to Southeast Asia, to Eastern Europe, to do a research and design thesis in a context that we weren't necessarily familiar with. There was also an option to go to the Middle East, in Kazu, to work on Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan. That was 2014. I'd always been quite interested in the Middle East, also because of my parents, who were quite activists involved in manifestations against the Gulf Wars, against the apartheid system in Palestine, and so on. So it was also the time of the war in Syria. It was a time, the end of the Arab Spring. It was also the time of bombardments in Gaza, and a time of a lot of refugees moving from the Middle East, or kind of the start of the big wave of refugees coming from the Middle East and Northern Africa to Europe. So for those who have actively lived that part of European history, it was quite a difficult time with a lot of pretty biased debates as well in the political environment and in the public space, in the media as well. So for me, having the opportunity to go to the Middle East and to discover this by myself, to see what's actually going on, who are these people that everyone talks about in not always the best manner, was a golden opportunity. So 2014, I went for the first time. A little tourist information. Jordan is an absolutely magnificent country, with extremely ancient history, in the sense that you would find Nabatean cities, you would find Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman fortresses, Crusader fortresses, name it, and people have been there. In the same time, it's also an extremely diverse natural system, or natural systems, in the sense that you would find extremely hostile dry deserts, you would find the Dead Sea, you would find the Red Sea with coral reefs, you would find subtropical canyons with waterfalls sprouting out of the earth, and you would find lush old growth forests. So it's a lot of bioregions that come together there. So 2014, for the first time, I find myself in Middle East, in Jordan, in the capital Amman, coming from a small village, having lived most of the time in a small provincial city, starting to live in a city that had the footprint of London, with a population of about 4 million, which is twice the size of Brussels, more or less, was quite a shock. I went there on a daily basis during 2 months, went to Gaza camp, or also called Jarash camp, in the northwest of Jordan, where we did fieldwork, research, a lot of mapping, as we were urban designers, or aspiring to be at least, to try to understand the camp and to work on proposing improvements regarding pedestrian-friendly areas, regarding a new bus stop, new markets, new ways of living, public green pockets, rainwater harvesting infrastructure, and so on. During that time, we had great help from a bunch of volunteers. On the top right picture, the guy with the black shirt, Faisal, was one of these guys who helped us on a daily basis to translate between Arabic and English. assisted as well by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East. Quite a mouthful, but well, let's call them the UN. And as part of our work there as well, besides the thesis, we helped some of our friends from the UN to work on an infrastructure and camp improvement manual, basically research and design a big booklet on information inside the camp and outside the camp to gather it and potentially propose new projects and apply for funding. After this 2 months wonderful experience, I went back. By the way, the picture that I didn't talk about on the right bottom, that is that's a faculty. It's a faculty of architecture where I spent 6 years of my life. So went back there in that castle. Nice environment, but after having spent these months on a daily basis in one of the worst as in one of the most difficult refugee camps in Jordan. It was quite shocking. So I finished my studies, and then by 2016, when it was up to me to decide what I wanted to go and do with my life, what kind of job to take, which direction to go in, I didn't feel like it was my calling to go work in an architectural firm. So I got back in touch with my friends and old colleagues from the UN, asking if there had been any developments in the work in the ICIP, Infrastructure and Camp Improvement Manual that we had made. To which I said, yes, there's going to be a project team starting, so welcome to join. And later on, after summer 2016, I found myself back in this massive city for a 3-month internship with the UN, during which I had some free time and I went on to explore and got to know about urban farming in refugee camps through some friends from university there in Jordan. So started dreaming. I ended my my internship after 3 months, and together with some really good friends who are the co-founders, my good friends Evi Hellebout and Jorik Doctors van Leeuwen, Belgian and a Dutch, we started an organization initially in a very beautiful place, a place called Jadal, a cultural cafe in the center of Amman, in the historical center. Jadal means conversation, and not just any conversation, but an important conversation that is talking about important topics. We started chatting about the potentials of urban farming, about helping to have like a bottom-up grassroots approach to improving living conditions for everyone in the city, but also specifically for refugees, because I felt quite a lot of affinity with them. I had quite a lot of good friendships. And they said, well, we have this roof space that has been full of garbage for a while. Be our guest and let's develop your first prototype together. So end of 2016 kind of started into 2017, and out of this, together with my friends, we set up this organization called Greening the Camps, Sutuh al-Khadra in Arabic, with this remarkable logo, which symbolizes the key of return, one of the strong symbols of Palestinian resistance. Since most of the refugees still have the key to their original house. It might be more common to refugees from other areas of the world. Not aware of this, but definitely for Palestinians, they would keep the key to their house even after 70 years. And then this key has these flowers and plants as to indicate a new future of a blossoming hope, basically. That's as it goes for a longer than short introduction. Before we go into the development of an urban farm or looking at what an urban farm is, I'd like to show a video. It's jumping a bit forward. It's one of the projects that I've loved to do most, as I was working as a production manager for Amman Design Week. And my organization, Greening the Camps, made some of the installations, which you will later on in the presentation see returning in the refugee camps. Before I play this, maybe I'll also mention after this, I will open a slot for questions. So I will do this on regular intervals so everyone can post questions on a bit of an organized manner. Let's see if this works and if you also hear the sound. I'm going to pause it. Can someone point out if you hear music or not? Do you receive sound from the video? No, you don't receive sound. I might try to unplug my headphones, although the quality is not going to be really good. It's going to play out of the speakers and re-record it and send it to you. Let's see how that goes.
The exhibition talks about problems that we face today in our urban environment. It talks about public space, about private space, about how we can bring more green, bring more nature into our cities, about the urban ecology. It also talks about where our food comes from. That's why we call it future food, future city. We're trying to explore alternatives when it comes to food creation. We've tried to bring together some old practices. There's permaculture, there's organic farming, we have composting and worm composting, very old techniques. And we bring that together with new techniques, technologies like hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, as well as digital fabrication with 3D printers, the CNC machines, and the laser cutters to try to put together what's existing right now in the field in Jordan and who's working on what.
Okay, it's for a little video. Was it clear? Everyone understood more or less? Cool. That was exactly 2 years ago, I realized yesterday. Emotional moment. I'm just gonna check the chat since I see clear for us. Ah, sweet, all right. Any questions so far? I'll take that as a no. All right. Okay, let's go into what is urban farming. Cool. Well, you can basically come up with hundreds of different definitions. One of them could be the cultivation of plants and animals in an urban environment, strongly integrated in the urban, social, economic, and ecological systems. So to break this down, it talks about plants and animals, talks about food production basically in an urban area or urban environments that is very well intertwined and connected with 3 pillars of social, economy, and ecology. So it's really there in the center of our urban habitat. Some of the elements, I'll go through some of the elements that are for us quite important and that for us also mark out a difference with rural agriculture in the sense. Mostly also to point out when I talk about urban agriculture, our experience is in family-based and in community-based projects, small-scale projects, as you'll see. It's not large-scale industrialized professional farming. There's a large focus on the social aspects, as you will see. So one of the first things is physical and mental health. This is a picture from the rooftop farm of Khouloud, who was at that moment, I think about 75, or she still is, now she's 2 years older. This was the end of 2019. Khouloud is a very strong, powerful woman who takes care of her family by herself, of her children and grandchildren. And when we started building this, it would take her quite some efforts to climb the stairs up to the roof. But after all the weeks of us going there on a regular basis to set up the installations, to plant, and then months later, when we used to go back for follow-up and checking with her if everything went well for improvements, she started to be able to hop up the chairs like her little grandchild. So this was for us an extremely clear evidence of how her physical health and strength improved by having the daily exercise, by being able to sit on the roof, looking out over the horizon and enjoying the landscape. So the physical health, there's a mental health, of course, has been well documented that exposure to greenery, being it outside or in an urban environment or indoors, has a very big positive effect on the mental health. When it comes to food security and food sovereignty, depending on the professionalism and the scale that you're working, it can help. I mean, even on a tiny scale, it will already help people to grow their own food and thus save money from spending on food, which they then can spend on broader healthcare, on education, on a better diet, on products that they previously potentially couldn't afford. So there's a sense of food security and then also a sense of food sovereignty. I've lost my cursor in here. Yeah, anyway, another part, it talks about culture, heritage, and identity. For many refugees, particularly here, the Palestinian refugees, their grandparents and parents came from agricultural backgrounds. As they became refugees, they have more or less transformed into entrepreneurs, into traders, and working in secondary and tertiary economy. But this sense of heritage, sense of identity is still strongly there. It's there in the narrative, it's there in the storytelling. This counts for them, this counts for us, Western, or for me at least, Western urban youth as well. It's a connection that has been lost. It's a connection to food production. It's a connection to knowing where the food comes from and what you eat. So by enabling people to grow their own food again, they can reconnect and they can take pride and ownership over what they've learned and what they are doing. Furthermore, while you're working in a city, there is a massive amount of resources that enter a city, that leave a city, and a massive amount of resources that are considered waste and that can be recycled and upcycled. So in a sense, you can try to create a closed circular system where your urban farm, as the example here on the rooftop of Jadal in downtown Amman, our first one, is completely made out of recycled material. So all the wood is pallet wood or wood we got for free from nearby carpenters. We have a glass wall made out of empty bottles and so on. So the whole place is upcycled, very low cost. You buy screws and plants or you propagate plants, but basically you can help in an urban environment to create a closed loop. Aesthetics, it's a bit what you want to do yourself, but for us, it means quite a lot within the certain context where we are and within the availability of crafts and skills and material that are there for us to make people love a place, because it will be a place where we hope they can go and enjoy a nice sunrise or a nice sunset where they take care of the plants, and that will help them to take ownership. It depends on the budget as well. Often you or we as well would find ourselves limited to working with recycled barrels, for example, as you'll see as well. But if there's budgets like this project we did for MBC, the Middle East Broadcast Network from Saudi Arabia, for a series with Lebanese production house, quite nice. This is on top of a community center with a hospital, with a wedding room and so on in East Amman. So there's a bit of a focus on aesthetics if you want. Then we can talk about biodiversity and urban ecology. So this is a picture of an insect hotel for how do you call them, individual bees, basically, not the honeybees that we know, but for sedentary masonry bees. So providing a green space and a green habitat can import and will import new types of animals from outside or from different gardens. It can create green corridors and improve our urban ecology and our biodiversity. Excuse me, I'm going to try to admit the waiting people. There's someone who is unmuted or who is unmuted and was giving me a bit of sound feedback. Do you mind if everyone unmutes? Yeah, better. Thank you very much. Another aspect that you can achieve with urban farming is empowerment. Empowerment for youth, empowerment for marginalized, disadvantaged people in society, empowerment for children, empowerment for elderly people, empowerment for women, for men as well. I don't think we need to put a label on it. I think everyone has the right to their specific needs to be empowered and to feel empowered. In this case, again, Khulud, with Iliad, her name is slipping me now. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but Khulud is an old Palestinian refugee, and the other woman, I'll find her name again, sorry. We hired her to help us out with the maintenance and with the education as well. She's a very experienced organic farmer, permaculturalist as well, from a Jordanian background. So there you're bringing traditional Jordanian people together with refugees, which then also empowers them to fight or to transit their social boundaries, basically, and to get to know each other. An urban environment. So with urban farming, again, here a picture of Jadal in downtown Amman. You can help to create a better urban environment, also in the sense that you can work on capturing, harvesting, storing, and using rainwater. By putting more soil on your roofs, you'll have, and more plants as well, you will have less reflective surfaces, so there is less heat up of the city. So the heat island effect goes down as well. So the city becomes a bit cooler, so improving our urban environments. Then there is the sense of useless spaces. So a lot of surfaces in our cities are covered and used as parking lots, covered with asphalt, concrete. In this case, a picture from Amman Design Week, with an installation from a Lebanese designer that was commissioned to us, that we built for her, in which you see a scaffolding structure with on top a herbal garden. The idea is that you can basically double the surface that you use. You park your car underneath, the car stays cooler, stays colder, doesn't heat up that much. And in the meantime, you can also grow vegetables on top of it. So it's a bit of a doubling of useless space. It can be in this form, it can be breaking up abandoned parking lots and starting urban projects there. But basically pointing out that a lot of our space in the urban environment is not really used, not really activated, and can definitely be put to productive means. Education has always played quite an important part for us. So we were mainly focused on design, implementation, and education. Here's a picture from Amman Design Week, for which we helped on making the text, the content, and also the illustrations to have an educational route. So for us, it's always been important when we work as designers and implementers, as consultants for clients or beneficiaries, to really take them along every step of the process, so they can also see how we design, how we build. We would often ask the families as well to, when we go on the weekend, for example, if possible, to have a few of their kids or nephews, whoever's interested, to come and help with us. Where possible, we would pay them as well for their time. So they really learn how to do it, how the inside of the system works, so they feel empowered and they have ownership and they can maintain it afterwards as well. Same goes for plant care, soil care. So they become basic farmers and they feel strong enough to develop their knowledge on their own. Does anyone have any questions? You can always raise your hand if you want. I can't see all the cameras on the screens, so it's quite difficult for me to see if someone's waving a hand on the screen.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please go for it.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic projects you guys have going on. And I don't know if you're going to bring this up later, but I posted it in the chat as well regarding funding and how you guys have gone about raising funding for the projects. Since you guys have been able to expand into so many projects, it would be nice to know how you guys have gone about that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I have it here as well. Funding for us came from different parts. The first pilot project that we did, we completely self-funded initially. So I basically had a full-time job and I put my entire salary into it by working after hours and then every weekend for several months. Probably not the best way to do it if you take care of your mental and physical health. But interesting experience nonetheless. We refunded this through an online crowdfunding campaign and also an offline campaign, doing cooking sessions, selling gadgets like tote bags, for example, organizing a concert and a party. That's one option. Then we had private clients as well. One of the ideas that we wanted to develop is to build projects for private clients and then use the profits to fund other projects. But the profit margin basically turned out to be way too low to actually save enough. You'd have to do like 1 year of private clients to be able to make one average size rooftop farm in a refugee camp. So then the impact goes just really slowly. We have regular donators who pitch in 25, 50 euros a month, for example, on our bank accounts. And one of the biggest funders that we've had is Investbank. That's a Palestinian family-owned bank, basically. So they have their CSR, their corporate social responsibility budget, which they quite only use for community projects and organic farming projects. So they are supporting a lot of rural farmers, and we were on their list of support for quite a while as well. They're also the main funder for Amman Design Week. And then besides that, we had material funding, material sponsorship. So we would get plants for free or good prices, good discounts. Yeah, that's more or less that far our funding. Or collaborations as well. I forget one. You'll see some pictures from a German organization called Help. So there we'd be working under their name as external consultants to build rooftop farms. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Cassiano de Sousa. Thank you. Nice. Urban agriculture is beyond food security, but also environmental sensibilization. I'm interested to know more about the funding too. So same question regarding the funding, and I definitely agree. It's absolutely about bringing awareness to people. So definitely thank you for pointing this out. That's one of the things that often would work on as well, without wanting to be too, how do you call it, patronizing towards people. Because many people have so many struggles they're dealing with on a daily basis with just surviving. That's starting to point out everyone's responsibility towards improving the environment isn't always the most positive way to go forward. Okay. Thank you. If there are no more questions, then I will continue with some more pictures and also a bit of a pathway on how to develop your own urban farm, because I think that might be interesting for most of us. All right, a little bit of text. So often before you want to start, what you find is asking questions of what and why before how. So depending on what you want to do, a private project, a community project, something for your family, something to make an income out, something to become a consultant and a constructor. These are questions to ask. What do I want to get? What do I want to achieve? Why? Do I want to focus on the food production? Do I want to work on environmental sensibilization? Do I want to work on a cooking culture, for example, like gastronomy, herbal plants, for example? These are questions to answer first, the what and the why. I'll get back to this once I get to the design. I see some smiley faces on the camera. Hi, Pedro Annette, good to see you. Some of the steps that I'll point out on the way is when you start developing a project, your first question is access and communication. Access quite a literal sense, because you need to be physically able to go where you need to go, being it in a small corner of the city without a proper roads to get material in, being it on a rooftop with difficult access, 7 levels of staircases, or an elevator that's too small, and then communication as well. The way that we worked on communication is we always partnered up with local organizations. So we would have although we were local as well, we're only working in Jordan in specific spaces, but because we weren't born there, we weren't raised there, for us, it was quite important to have this local knowledge, these fields or these feet on the ground, and to connect with people who have a massive amount of trust within the local communities, being aware that we are the 1000th person from abroad who want to come in with good intentions, and people kind of have not always the best experiences with this. So teaming up, partnering up with a local organization is a really good way forward, and also to rely on them and to have support and structure wherever necessary. Second thing, after you have sorted this out, because many projects fail in these first steps, like the vast majority, I'm going to say 99%, might be less, might be more, but there's a big amount of projects that fail in these steps. You want to look at water and infrastructures. I'll go later back to what infrastructures are, but water seems quite obvious. If you want to build and if you want to grow, make sure you have this available first, because you don't want to be carrying buckets up a stair for a few months. And the last thing you want to do is looking at biological communities, your plants and animals. Just some outlines, you will understand this as I go forward. So what I'm going to do next is explain a methodology that we use in landscape design and absolutely in permaculture design, which is called SADIM, stands for Survey, Analysis, Design, Implementation, and Maintenance. So what comes next is a step-by-step breakdown of these different elements. And in the meantime, as I said before, I will explain you some anecdotes about different projects. I'm gonna check the chat. Okay, cool. Let's go for it then. Step one, survey and analysis, is basically observing where you are, being it on a roof, being it in a rural place, being it on the ground floor, gathering your maps, gathering regulations, gathering legal advice from the municipality, whatever you need to get, gathering first point, stability, making sure what your roof can carry if you're working on a roof. Do get an engineer, don't be shy, don't take any risks. So the stability is a very important thing to figure out. Access, as I've said already, make sure you're kind of realistic with your expectations. You can use stairs, you can use a crane to lift up things to a roof, but it's an important thing to figure out. And it's often much more difficult than working in a rural environment where you can get tractors and bulldozers and whatever in. So the next thing, as I said, is water. Water flows down. So if you want to get it up the roof, you need to pump it in one way or another. Wind. In urban environments, regarding on how the city has been built and designed, you would get wind tunnel effects. So you might be unlucky on the place where you are, that it's extremely exposed, that the shape of other buildings directs wind currents straight onto your roof, which will then damage your structures potentially, and which will definitely put a lot of stress on your plants. Then there is a sun, also depending where you are. Properly analyze, properly survey. If your space is next to a skyscraper, you might not have that much sun, and you might want to look for another place to go and work, or adapt your plants, for example, or also adapt your expectations of what you will get out of it. And the last point is soil building. Often, if you'd be working on the ground level, a lot of soils in urban environments are polluted. So that's definitely something to look at, and it definitely makes the process a lot more difficult. If you're working in containers, as I will show in a bit, on a rooftop, you have to start from scratch. So you'd have to put a lot of emphasis and a lot of time and energy investment into creating healthy soil, because the soil is, after all, what feeds our plants and that feed us. So that's the first step, survey and analyze. I'm going to show a few. Yes, I can see a question. Go for it. If you want to ask it now, do it. If not, I can come back to it later.
Thank you very much. So my question is from the constraints and opportunities. So I heard you on the water part. You said water is readily available. So I have here in Eswatini, where we are in African countries, there is a lack of enough water. So what other kind of way can we use in order to get it? Can he? Yes. So we want to know how can we find a way of mobilizing or taking the water or gaining the water from for this project? How can we, because we do not have the seas here in Eswatini, we do not have we only have dams, of which you may find that dams, they are far from where we are. So how can we do this project if we do not have this water part? Enough water, yes, enough water.
Okay, thank you. So I'll reiterate the question to be sure I understood it correctly. So the question is how you can realize projects like this if you don't have enough water, right? Okay. I'm going to address this in a bit later. In a few moments, when I talk about certain systems, I will address water filtration systems, and I will also address rainwater harvesting systems. So of course, like I didn't understand where you are exactly. Jordan is an extremely arid environment where luckily there is groundwater. So there are water pipes, there is a system, a municipal system that brings water on a weekly basis, which of course I understand is not available everywhere in the world. So as for these issues, I'll try to address it in a little bit when I look at the different systems, different design elements. Thank you for the question, if that's fine. So as we go on with survey analysis, I'd like to just show two examples of what I just described. For example, this is a design for a rooftop farm on top of a large orphanage, which sadly, due to COVID, didn't go through. But basically, you see sort of an isometric view with the north on the top. So what we have there is in the middle, that white block is our entrance. That's where the staircase comes up with behind it a small nursery. And right in the forefront, you see this quite dark blue kind of wind barrier. So why do I show this? It's because when we make the design, we go there and we see that the main wind direction, for example, comes from the southwest. Could be from the north, depending where you are. So you want to protect, we're 7 stories high. We're overlooking a deep valley. So all the wind that hits the ridge top of this specific neighborhoods flies straight into the roof. So it was even hard to stand up there. So you need to protect yourself from the winds. Sadly enough, as you would do on a rural environment, you would plant trees, but planting trees on the roof, one is quite difficult unless the structure can allow it, and 2 will take a lot of time. So here to fight or to basically deal with this wind issue, you use a fast structure. It can be wood, it can be steel, it can be concrete, basically to protect your plants and your structures, and also the people that want to enjoy the roof after all from this wind. And then this rectangular steel structure that you see over there in the forefront with all the cables is an idea to let climbing plants with flowers or fruits, stuff like kiwi, stuff like passiflora, bougainvillea, jasmine, grow over it. So you can provide a natural shade. It takes a bit more time, might take 1 or 2 seasons, but eventually you create quite a beautiful space. This is the same project from the other angle. So you would see a lot of these circular barrels. These are blue barrels. I'll show you some pictures later. And plastic and metal IBC tanks, the big 1 cubic meter tank. So here, most of the material is upcycled. But I'm showing this image to point out that we observed, we checked the wind, we checked the sun, and we understood which parts had to be protected because they were too exposed in a nutshell. Another one is a ground floor for a children's center and a language school, in which you have the entrance to the front. Again, you see a lot of blue barrels, and they had one of the issues was that the forefront is oriented on the south, so the building would become really hot, and they had a massive electricity bill for air conditioning. So what we did is we designed, again, a structure with simple metal poles and metal cables, so we could grow, again, climbing plants with flowers to beautify the area, but also to create a buffer and insulation. So there would be less sun falling onto the building during summer. In winter, they would receive sun because the plants would lose their leaves. So they would pay less, less air conditioning in summer. Same project from another angle, and this is already a start of what I want to explain later on with the rainwater filter. So these 4 barrels you see over there, that's 8,000 liters, sorry, 8 cubic meters of rainwater. So these tanks, I think they were about between 50 and 75 euros. Can't properly recall, depends on the quality, can go up to about 100 euros. But let's say for around 500 euros with the pipes included, eventually a pump as well. If you want, you can have around 8,000 liters of water storage, which in this case will not get you through a growing season, but it can get you through a couple of weeks to months if you use it sparingly. Okay, survey analysis. So I'm going through SADIM, survey analysis, then comes the D, is design, and I will show a couple of structures. All the illustrations are also made by my co-founder, Evie, and I, which were also used on the Amman Design Week exposition. Check the questions. Swaziland, okay, nice, welcome. Cool. Sweet. All right. So structures, it depends a bit on the budget, on the material you have available. We kind of like to work a lot with wood. Jordan doesn't have that much resources, so the steel and the woods are in most cases imported. So there you can look a bit at certified materials, can look a bit also at cradle to cradle and working circumstances of people involved in the production process, which requires quite a lot of market research. I must admit, we didn't go that far into looking at this, also because the Jordanian market is much less aware of this than, for example, the Belgian market. But depending on what you need, like the right top is a wooden structure, a wooden greenhouse covered with burlap. Eventually, we covered it with green shading plastic for half of it, and then agricultural greenhouse plastic for the other half, so we can have a proper greenhouse. Right bottom and left top are custom-made greenhouses. For one of it is on the rooftop of HELP, German NGO, and the other one is in a language school in the east of Amman. So these are custom-made greenhouses that fit once on the roof, once on the ground floor, really aiming to prolong the growing season, basically. And the one on the left bottom is a pergola with a seating area that we made for the Belgian ambassador. When we just got started, we asked him if there would be an option to use his connections to get projects, to get funds, to which he said, well, build a showcase on the roof of my house, and I will invite you. A number, I think about 40 people showed up, influential politicians, businessmen, people from the media. So you can have an audience, basically. Instead of doing a PowerPoint presentation, you just show them in real life what you're doing, and then hopefully people will come around and help you with the projects, to which I must admit the eventual help we got was quite limited, but still worth the effort, and I very much welcome the help of the Belgian ambassador as well there. So structures, depending on what you need, depending on what you have, depending on what you like as well, can be a lot of things, a lot of different things. So as I mentioned before, you can grow straight on a roof. Have I mentioned it? But it doesn't matter. You can grow straight on a roof by providing an extensive or an intensive green roof. But basically, you need to make sure that you have really proper waterproofing, that you have your aggregates, your soil all thought out. Because in every case we worked, the waterproofing of the roof wasn't guaranteed in the first place. So we also didn't want to take the risk to put soil and water straight on the roof. So what we did was we made waterproof containers. So we had more control over it. And if there would be a leak, we could easily move our boxes around and find the problem on the individual box instead of trying to find the problem on the roof. So here you say you can make water plant boxes out of whatever you have. A broken TV, a broken heating system, a bathtub, a fridge, these blue barrels. Do check what has been in them. Often we'd find them having corn starch. We send them to a car wash, clean them out, and quite done. But if they have carried chemicals, you might have to be a bit more careful. Can be upcycled woods. The two at the bottom are gallons from olive oil. So a bit disgusting to clean out because it's quite sticky, but eventually it can hold your plants for a few seasons until they rust through. One important design element, do I need to point out something? Maybe the one on the top left is the same structure that you saw in the video of Amman Design Week. So what we did there is we set up 4 structures, which functioned as info booths, as welcome areas, exposition space, and then food hubs, complete modular systems with steel brackets in the elbows and the corners, and then wooden pieces, wooden beams and rafters. So we could just easily dismantle it, put it in a truck and ship it to a refugee camp where we rebuild it. And the whole design had been customly designed for these roofs because most of the buildings have a modular or built on a modular grid of 4 by 8 meters. So that's also the dimension we used for our greenhouses or the structures. So we knew that it fit exactly where we had to put them in later on. It looks a bit empty now, but afterwards everything had been planted and was quite green and lush. Okay, 5 minutes. As a further example, which might be good for Swaziland, if I understand that there is a bit of an issue with water. By the way, most of my experience also comes from arid regions, as in Jordan. So what we worked with a lot is a wicking bed. A wicking bed is a plant box. All of these are also wicking beds. It's a waterproof plant box, in this case, made out of wood, with a plastic liner in the middle. I'll show you the pictures here. So you have a wooden box. And we would buy agricultural grade pond liner. It's what farmers use when they make a water reservoir. They line it with this plastic and we would fold it in perfectly. So it fits, it seals. We would screw it from the top. On the left picture, you see my colleague and good friend Yazan, who has this copper piece in his hand. That is an outlet from a water tank, which in Jordan you would find basically in every plumbing shop. The idea is that it's a drainage system, and I'll explain you why. So the way that this works is through capillary movement of water, which is the friction that water has inside soil and inside certain stones like volcanic rock or expanded or extruded expanded clay. Volcanic rock is widely available in Jordan. That's why we use it a lot. So we would start with around 15 centimeters of volcanic rock. Then we would put a plastic mesh, like it can be a root mat, but it can also just be the fabric you put in front of your window, the mosquito netting. And then we would fill up the soil or fill up the top. Can be, depending on what you want to grow, can be 35, can be 50 centimeters, can also be 5 centimeters, depending on the plant, with a soil mix, something that's not too heavy, so no massive clay. We would mix it with composts, eventually potentially peat moss, cocoa peat, some other aggregates to make a well-draining soil. And the idea is that afterwards, or while you do it, you put a PVC pipe, a 1 or 2 inch PVC pipe you get from the plumber, in one corner or one side of the box that goes down, just down, or with an elbow along the length of the box. You see it on the left side appearing again. And you put your water in through the top of the pipe. So the water goes to the bottom and sort of fills up your 15 centimeters of volcanic rock until it reaches this drainage, which you see in the forefront of, like on the right edge of this drawing. That's the piece that my colleague Yazan is holding. When it reaches there, it will go out. You basically stop watering. But the point is that your water is below, and through capillary friction, all the tiny channels in your rocks and in your soil, the water will move upwards against gravity. which has a result that there is almost no evaporation. If you would water on the top on a 30 or 40 degree hot day, a lot of the water will be lost through evaporation from the sun and from the wind. But there is never any water on the top of your box because it's always underground, so there is no evaporation. And plus, you can also put straw or cardboard or leaves in the form of a mulch on the top of your box. So you almost limit evaporation and limit stress on your plants and overheating. With our experience, we made wicking beds between like literally the tiny boxes that you see here, but also up to 2 square meters surface. You can go much bigger as well. And in summer, we would water, depending on the plants growing in it, we would water about once a week to once every 2 weeks. In winter, we would maybe water once a month, depending on the amount of rain. So just to show you that this is just extremely efficient, extremely water saving. If you would be irrigating from the top, you'd probably have to water twice a day. So twice a day to twice a month is a massive, massive amount of time and energy and water that you save. The left bottom picture, you see the mosquito nets, which I mentioned, which form a barrier. I think I'm going to run out of time. I'm quite sure I am. I'm just going to continue. I don't think there's much to do about it. My apologies for this. I hope to be finished in about 15 minutes or so. Sorry for this. Then the beauty of working with wood, which we did, is that you can make custom-made boxes to fit in tiny corners, tiny spaces. On the left top, you see again the project for MBC or with MBC. These big hats on top of it are called cold frames. So that's a steel structure with plastic in this case, which you can close or open. You can replace the plastic with a shading plastic, but basically you create a tiny greenhouse, which is a lot cheaper and easier, especially in windy environments as well, than setting up an actual greenhouse structure. So it's quite a nice addition to it as well. One of the things we experimented with is hydroponics in Kazu, also for the project for the German NGO, also made out of wood. You can do it with whatever material you have. So hydroponics is a form of soilless agriculture in which you would not use soil unless maybe in the plant pots, but basically you feed your plants through nutrient-rich water. So you'd have water running through the system. Let's see if I can show it here. They go from the top to the bottom to a reservoir and be pumped up again. For us, it didn't really work. Like technically it works, but it requires know-how, and there are a lot of issues that can go wrong. If there's no electricity, if there's a power cut, your plants will die within 30 minutes or an hour. Plus you need to be really skilled and knowledge about what your specific plants need regarding the nutrients and micronutrients and minerals and so on. So this makes you quite dependable on what you can find on water soluble fertilizers on the market. And for as far as I know, there is no market, or there are almost no products that are organic. So for our case, it was quite difficult. If you're in charge and you can manage it and you have the knowledge, definitely go for it. But if you're working with families and a community, it's quite difficult because often there's a turnover of people. So this is a bit a tricky one. Okay, water harvesting and filtration. I think this might hopefully answer some of the questions. What you see here on this drawing is at the bottom a kitchen with a bath, a washing machine with a pump installation that pumps water up to a 1 cubic meter tank on the roof, and that then pumps the water up to what looks like a hydroponic system. I'll show pictures in a bit. So it's a vertical water filter. The water goes down again into a tank and is either way fed to your plants or goes back into the dirty water tank and has a second or third or fourth circulation to clean. this is a picture of a prototype which we were able to develop as part of an agri-tech residency with Amman Design Week and with FabLab Erlebit. So you see here a custom-made system with pipes. The water reservoir is hidden underneath. It's just a tiny tank with a little pump from a fountain, like a 20 euro tiny pump that you would put in your garden between your fish to pump up some water. So usually you would use this system to grow vegetables in the pipes, but we got water plants from the river. I can't remember the name, but specific grasses that do filter the water, that have a biological or a bacterial community around the roots that clean the water. So this is a prototype. Sadly enough, haven't really been able to develop it further or to monitor the results. But if anyone's willing on taking this forward, I'd be very interested in seeing what results you can get out of it. But maybe a more straightforward way is a gray water filter system. The reason why we developed the other one is because a gray water system takes up space and is quite heavy as well. So having a vertical system, we thought in tiny places like balconies could save space, and it's quite cheap with the pipes. But if not, this is a project we did for CRP, Collateral Repair Project, at a school and a community center in quite a poor neighborhood in East Amman. First of all, in the top picture, the white tanks again are 2 cubic meter water tanks, which are connected to this blue barrel, which is full of gravel and carbon and sand. So this is for rainwater. The water goes in, percolates and filters through the carbon and the sand and the gravel to clean it, and then gets stored in the tanks. This as well eventually had to be our water reserve to feed a rooftop garden on the same roof, which also never got through due to COVID. But anyway, but as to the gray water filter, so this is a custom-made galvanized steel buffer system. Buffer or baffle system, looks a bit like a septic tank, but basically the water goes in from one side. You have this pipe that goes like this with the water dripping out, and then you have, it's a bit hard if this is your tank, you have like a wall that hangs from the top that is open from the bottom, then one from the bottom that is open from the top, and then again one from the top open from the bottom. So your water drips down and is forced to move through the system. And in the system there's gravel and sand, and then again reeds, certain reeds and grasses from the river, which then can help us to clean the water. And then eventually it goes through another filter and ends up in this black water tank, which was unfortunately not very beautiful, painted. And then this water wasn't used on vegetables. Like, be really careful with filtering your gray water and using it on vegetables. But we had a garden planted there with some flowers, climbers as well. So they just went into non-food production. I hope this helps. Definitely do look up gray water filter systems. So I would suggest trying to filter and reuse as much water as you can, because indeed it's a scarcity. And then the last thing to look at are potentially urban animals. I'll show you the picture. This is not my work. This is from Tayoun, from Dima Asaf, a very, very brilliant architect who sort of reinterpreted our Iranian style of pigeon towers to sort of celebrate this ancient knowledge, this ancient sport, and also culinary item, let's say. But the point to be made here is that pigeons, for example, provide quite a good source of nutrients, chickens as well. So often in the West, we don't really have animals in our cities anymore besides cats and dogs, and then a lot of rats and cockroaches and pigeons and seagulls. But in the past, in the West and in other cultures still, there was space for animals that consumed our organic resources, our waste from the kitchen, like chickens, like pigeons, like pigs occasionally as well, or hamsters, caviars, guinea pigs, whatever. But through a sense of hygiene, I think in the West we have lost this idea, but the resource is still there. We still produce all this organic waste, which lingers around, and then it creates a niche in the environment, which then gets filled up with pests, cockroaches, rats. So this is quite a nice project to think about having animals in your urban system, if it doesn't cause troubles to your neighbor, if it doesn't cause extra pollutants. Composting, worm composting. There are no pictures here, but basically the idea is that you can use the organic material in boxes. Often if you're in a rural, if you have a garden, you would put it on the ground. So ideally the microbiological life and the fungal life can go from the soil and help decompose. When you do it in a compost, in boxes of the ground, for example, you will need to bring inoculating agents. So very healthy compost, a bit of forest soil. Basically, you will have to bring the bacteria into the system to really kickstart or help to speed up your decomposition process. In this particular case, we had these boxes that open from the top and open from the front as well. With a steel plate, we would just get an old metal water tank, cut it open and use the bottom, plus drill some holes with a bucket underneath so the water can basically drip through. So it doesn't get too wet, and also nutrients get dissolved in the water. So you would have a kind of compost tea, which you could then use on fertilizing your plants, either way after being aerated first, mixed to bring some oxygen into the system. And then a last one, I think we're there, is vermicompost. So that's composting with the help of worms. In this case, you see a cut through a bathtub with a wooden lid. So the idea is that in your bathtub, you raise it a little bit with some stones, a piece of wood, a piece of chicken mesh, and then put on your organic material, basically all the garbage or the waste, the leftovers from your kitchen. Ideally, uncooked food, no meat, no rice, no fats, because it might attract other predators as well. I just used to put everything in there and it kind of worked. Sort of depends as well where you are, depends on your neighbors, depends on the amount of street cats and massive rats that you have to fight with. So worms, you have red wigglers, you have tiger worms, which are specifically well at decomposing organic matter, and they basically turn your food into compost that you can then use as a fertilizer. And again, a bucket underneath, so the worm pee flows out and can be used as a liquid fertilizer. Okay, just a sec. I'm going to end the presentation and then we'll have questions. Basically, this was, thank you very much for starters. What I've tried to do as co-founder of Wicking Bed now is explaining you how we work. It's been a bit more technical than it has been social, I think, but I'm very much open to questions in a bit about whatever you'd like to know. Reading the camps has a bit on a break since beginning of 2020, since COVID more or less, but we're looking in restarting it. And in the meantime, or together with this, me and some friends are setting up a design studio, a collective called Baladi Collective, which is an Arabic word, which means my country, my land, my home. Symbolizes indigenous, local, authentic, slow solutions, honest solutions, and also symbolizes a bit for most of us involved the question, where is home? Where do we belong, if not everywhere? So we're working on this to do projects related to urban farming, related to permaculture, land-based design, illustration, website development, and so on. And in the public, in the private, in the nonprofit sector, and Greening the Camps will also get its space or its place within Baladi Collective. So far, if you're interested, there is an Instagram page. There is nothing on it yet, but we are working hard and tirelessly behind the scenes to get this rolling. So that's for me, my co-founders, our way forward. And I think there is a beautiful picture of my dear friend and colleague Marwa on the left and Khouloud on the right. So thank you. I'm going to close it here and then reply some questions from the chat, or if people want to ask questions in real time, then they're also very welcome to do so. Thank you all for being here. Okay, this is weird. Usually there's like an applause or something. Yes, please do ask your question.
Thank you very much. That was a nice session. So we are in Eswatini. So my question would be as to how can we work with the greening camps, because this is a good project, and if we can have it here in Eswatini, I think we can help develop our country at some point. So how can we as United Youth work with the greening camps on this program they are having? Because yeah, yes.
Yeah. What I would suggest is to maybe send an email to us or a message on Instagram, and then yeah, just pose your question. I will read it. You don't need to add too much. Like, we know each other now, so I will know who you are. Explain the situation. Explain what you'd like to do, and then we'll take it from there. We'll organize a call, and then I'm very much willing to help in any way and assist in any way that I can.
Thank you.
Welcome. And thank you for attending. Really lovely. Very good to have you here. I'm going to answer in the meantime a question from Iyad Al-Qaizi. How many rooftops or spots have you already created in Jordan, and which refugee camps? I'm going to say around 15 projects, more or less, between 15 and 20. I should know the number, but it's been a while. Different sizes. Some are like really small. Some are a little bit larger as in a 4x8 or a 4x12. So they're not massive, as I said. Besides that, we've done lectures, we've done educational projects, we've done a lot of workshops, carpentry workshops, teaching people in the north, like next to Zatari, the Syrian camp, on how to make wicking beds from garbage, as I said, televisions, heating stoves, and so on. So yeah, around 20, I'm going to say, maybe with the educational parts, somewhere 20, 25. Which refugee camps? So in Jordan, it's been Gaza camp, Mukhayam Gaza or Mukhayam Jarash, that we have worked in. And then besides that, a little bit all over the city. Also in schools, public, private schools. I haven't showed pictures of these, but that's been there as well. And then the north and the east of Amman mainly. Thank you for this question. I hope my answer satisfies. Thank you, Ani Castillo. Then Abba has a question. How did you test for soil pollution? Did you outsource the service from a laboratory? We haven't done this since we've always worked on the roof. And once we've done, like the picture you saw from the greenhouse attached to it, we basically made wicking beds on there because the soil was just disastrously bad. And also because there was a barber shop underneath. So we had caused a little leak by watering before. So we had to solve this problem with him as well. So we just decided on making proper wicking beds, nice and waterproof, so no risks. So even when you're not on the roof, you can still cause damage to your neighbor's property. Thank you. So Omar asks if we're still implemented in Jordan. Do you plan on implementing rooftop gardens in other countries? So as I said, after 2019, the end of 2019, we sort of stopped, or at least in beginning of 2020, for the first 3 months until COVID broke down, we had actually started on implementing 7 rooftop farms, I think 7, with HELP, the German NGO. Until then, COVID happened, and Investbank was there as well to start sponsoring us on quite a big investment to do a large amount of rooftop farms in Gaza camp. But then also they had to redirect their funds towards a more medical input. And do we implement or plan on implementing rooftop gardens in other countries? Definitely. So as Baladi Collective, it's an international design studio, an international container umbrella, basically, with a few let's call it fixed members, but the idea is to have a platform where, based on the specific project and on the specific location, we can gather a team of experts from the fields, people with field knowledge, people with technical knowledge, whatever we need on implementing projects. So definitely, if there are any projects, if people have ideas, if people have requests, definitely do reach out either way to Greening the Camps or to Baladi Collective, because we are very much waking up again after a bit of a quiet 1.5, 2 years of doing other things. So we are very much looking for projects, absolutely, project as well as funds. I see a question from Cassiano de Sousa. I would like to know more about the manure you guys use to the plants. Are you using some kind of household compost? Yes, absolutely. And also when we make our soil mix, we work together with professional landscaping or like gardening shops, or at least 2, that had professional mixing installations for soil. So we could really ask for a specific ratio of cocoa peat, peat moss, local clay, local soil, composts. We could even, because we used to even deliver our compost, we used to buy it from one of our friends who had an organic compost shop, let's say. It's a factory in the central south of Jordan. She took a PDC from Jeff Lawton, then started her own project, and then enrolled, empowered 5 to 10 women from the area to make compost, which they then sold to Amman. Beautiful project. So also quite good quality organic compost, really good. So we bought our compost from them, trucked it into the landscaping company. They mixed it based on our requests. So yeah, there was manure, goat manure as well, indeed. Okay, I'm just gonna keep on rolling. Thank you. I hope it doesn't get boring. Yevon asks, are you planning to work outside of Amman as well? Definitely, absolutely. Elena asks, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I'm interested how you meet the refugees first time. Is it easy to start with them, and is your help accepted easily? As I said, really, or maybe you joined later, so find a local partner, find people you know. I was lucky because I had that intro in 2014 with my master's research, so I had my friends there, so it was quite easy to contact them. If not, figure out who's working in a refugee camp. Local small NGOs, contact them. People are like surprisingly almost always up for good ideas. So you pitch an idea like this or a similar one, and it's very easy to see the potential. The projects always got really easily accepted. We never really had to explain much. You come up with the idea of growing healthy homegrown food, and just it's like people, as I also explained, it's part of the culture, it's part of the heritage to grow food. In Arab cultures, cooking is one of the foundations. Basically, cooking and eating together is such a huge importance that just bringing up the topic of growing good foods in your own place, having control over organic food and what goes in, is very easily accepted. Yeah. So that usually we never faced any problems. Ahmad asks if we will keep on working with refugees under Baladi Collective or other designs. So Greening the Camps, basically, if we work with refugees, it will be under Greening the Camps, which they're going to be tied together. Greening the Camps is a non-profit. Baladi Collective will be a for-profit, so they'll be interchangeable. Definitely will be active on both fronts. Yeah. It says, I'm based in Jordan, working on food security and refugees, also a member of Bites of Transformation Project. Okay, nice. I'll look into this. I don't know this. And I would like to meet you guys in person and for future collaboration. Sweet. Also contact us on Instagram and send an email, definitely. And I'm going to be in Jordan in March. I'm teaching a permaculture design course in Wadi Rajib, between Jarash and Ajloon, second 2 weeks of March. So definitely reach out to us, and then we can already have a call or an email conversation, and then later on meet in person. Thank you for the invitation. Okay. Are there any more questions? Any more hands that are raised? Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan is a very good friend from university. Thank you all for attending. It's been a really wonderful experience. I've recorded. I think I can also share it, I guess. Thank you, Cassiano, for the greetings from Brazil. Sweet. Thank you. And yeah, have a wonderful day. I'll keep it open for a bit. I'll wait for you guys to leave and then just